instead of talking in the abstract about realignment, we can actually talk about something happening as Colorado on their way to the Big 12. It appears that it will be official at about 4:30 this afternoon after the board meets to approve that last night. The Big 12 presidents and whatever you want to call that group all voted unanimously to invite Colorado into the Big 12. So now almost all the formalities are out of the way, and the Big 12 is now 13 teams, will be 13 teams strong and waiting on another. We don't know, obviously, who the next target could be or would be coming, but there's the other schools in the Pac-12, and there's a lot of smoke about UConn. I think UConn is one of those things that if everything else doesn't work out, or they're down the line, but Brett Yormark really likes the idea of UConn. So before you kind of dive into what about UConn coming next, I don't think they would be next unless no one else comes to the Big 12. But right now, I think that the writing's on the wall for the Pac-12, and I'm very curious, Craig, as to how they swim out of this water.
Well, hey, what's up, chat? Hope everybody's doing good today, and glad to be back. 2 days until vacation. Not that I'm counting or anything like that, but yeah, I mean, definitely a gift from the college football news gods, as you put it, yesterday. And yes, it's amazing to be able to talk about actual real deal moving parts and real deal stories that aren't just, sources or this could happen or this might happen or whatever. And, just time goes on and nothing seemingly ever changes. No, there was a big shift and actual change yesterday as we were on the air. And yeah, here we are. And here in about an hour and a half, it looks like we could be officially talking about the re-entry of the Colorado Buffaloes into the Big 12 as a member for the second time. And I mean, you mentioned a lot of things there. We can unpack them all throughout the show today. But I think just the first and foremost biggest thing is, yeah, congrats to Colorado. And what a deal that is for them to decide to just not wait any longer and go take the money where they know the money can be taken and go get a little bit more exposure based on the information they have at hand. And you know what? Go back where they started. It's not like they were always a Pac-12 team, and it's like, oh my gosh, they're leaving 100 years of history. No, they were a Big 12 team. I think sometimes we lose sight of that just because of where they've been recently. So this is coming back home in so many ways, and I'm still, surprised. I don't know if shocked is as extreme of a word as I would use, but definitely still just kind of taken aback by how quickly that seemed to move yesterday, and just excited that, another step will be taken here in just a little while. And then, as you said, we can kind of go from there. 13's not going to be 13. It's going to be, a nice round number, I would think. And if you want to unpack, the UConn part of this, I said earlier in the week, and I saw there was a UConn account. They're like, the reports state UConn's not getting in. I didn't say that I was reporting that. I said that I don't think that UConn is getting into the conference. And, hey, I didn't think a Pac-12 team was going to make the jump. And then Colorado's like, screw you guys. We're bailing. And, I'm happy to be wrong in that case. I'm happy that I was wrong about, a Pac school. But with UConn, yeah, I still think that that's not some slam dunk that we hear in the next 24 hours right after Colorado, and then Yormark's like, hey, we've got our 14. I think that, particularly given the Colorado situation, you're going to wait and see what the rest of the Pac-12 has to say. I mean, that's a bigger target. That's a Power 5 brand, whether you're talking about your Utahs or your Oregon or whoever you want to throw out there for discussion. But, yeah, I think you're going to wait and see what you can get maybe out of that, and what else you can squeeze from that fruit. And, if UConn eventually is a part of that mix, I think that they, at worst for now, remain in the periphery, or they're still in eyesight. They're still within arm's length. And I think they're still receptive, and you're obviously receptive to them. But if you can go scoop in and grab, one of these other schools out west, then I think that that's the far more, prudent move to make. And I think that those involved also realize that. So I know it's Yormark's deal that, UConn would make a lot of sense, the Northeast and closer to NYC and East Coast and all those types of things. But I think most eyes are out west right now, and rightfully so. And that all starts with Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah, I think that, there's a lot to unpack with everything that went on. I keep thinking back to George Kliavkov answering a question like, are you worried about the Big 12 poaching any of your schools? And his quote was, "That's not a concern at all. We have bigger fish to fry. A round of realignment is done." And then less than a week later, that exact scenario happened, which has now happened to him several times. We'll get a TV deal done, before they're at the market before the Big 12, flat-footed. USC and UCLA, flat-footed. Of course, I'm not going in sequence here. It's just the way they're putting me here. Colorado, flat-footed. I mean, all these things. The Alliance, for God's sakes, flat-footed. The Pac-12 is burdened by some really troubling leadership, I think. From Larry Scott, and I don't know, I'm not sure George Kliavkoff stepped into the situation that you interview for a job sometimes and you walk in and you think, man, this is going to be great. And you start doing that job and you're like, man, this was not what the interview was about. And not that I'm taking that off of him, but I do think that he stepped into a situation that was a little more thorny than he maybe thought it was going to be. And then I do think that part of the problem the entire time since USC and UCLA left is that the remaining schools, and particularly several of the power brokers in this, when it comes to negotiating the media deal, think that LA is still part of their footprint when it's not. Because they're like, well, we have tons of alumni in LA. Yeah, but the two schools that live in it are gone now. So you're not going to be playing road games there. Like, none of those things that your alumni are going to be excited about are happening in LA anymore. None of the television that you were excited about is happening in LA anymore. So it's over. And I think that they had Los Angeles in their mind as part of their viable markets, and they're like, yeah, UCLA and USC are gone, but that doesn't mean that they own LA. Yes, they do. They live there. That would be like, Baylor leaving, and well, I mean, that's not the case because A&M and Texas still have large footprints here, but the Cowboys leaving Dallas, and they're like, no, the NFL's, we're fine. They're moved to London. We're fine. We don't worry about Dallas people watching them again. It's just the team that lived there is gone. You can't just say it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's aired it in a lot of different ways, Paul. Not speaking really at all for the last year while all of this stuff was going on. And now I was at a red light. I looked down on my phone for a second, just 1 second. Wasn't looking at it any more than that. Of course, I drive by the rules. I obey all laws on the road at all times. But I saw a tweet, and I thought it was from Dan Wetzel, and maybe not because now I can't find it. So maybe it's Dan Wilkin, and maybe not because now I can't find it. So now I can't find where that tweet came from. I'll try to track it down. But it was speaking of George Kliavkoff, and it was a quote from him, I think, from today or something, where he was talking about, or his report of what he was saying about how they were surprised by Colorado. And I think every quote tweet I saw was like, how are you possibly surprised by Colorado leaving? You've literally had an entire year of rumor mill stuff going on surrounding your conference with every team under the sun named, but particularly the four corner schools, which includes Colorado. And they were quiet for a majority of the time. And yes, there were times Rick George or someone would come out and speak, and they'd say the same things that leave you rest assured that everything's going to be okay in the end. But there was way too much smoke going on for him to have been blindsided in any way. And if he was, he needs to be fired. I mean, and I don't call for people's jobs, but that's buffoonery if you didn't have any idea that Colorado or any other school for that matter could potentially leave. That's just not doing your job, because it's literally been talked about to death to the point where they refuse to even talk about it. It's being talked about so much because they don't want to throw any more gasoline on it. And meanwhile, I guess they have people that just go and they try to brush off any report that said otherwise, and they, paint a label on it. It's 12 and on, it's this or that, it's all BS. Look, I know there's a lot of rumor mill stuff that goes on, especially when it comes to realignment. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of S to sort through a lot of the time, but there was enough substance there to know better than to think that this was all entirely made up, especially given Yormark's reputation, especially given his stated public desires, that of Baylor Athletic Director Mack Rhoades at least 20 times on this show, that they are open for business. They're open to listen to anybody. Yormark made it clear we'd love to be coast to coast. We'd love to have this. We'd love to have that. I mean, they didn't hide it. They didn't pretend like they were saying one thing and then doing another. Like, it's all been very clear. So if he was in any way, shape, or form, if that what I read was true, then that's going to have to be a long, hard meeting with your commissioner, I think, with the Pac-12 presidents. And maybe when they get together tonight and they go over what all's been discussed today, that will be a topic of conversation. But yeah, I mean, they got caught flat-footed. How, you ask? I have no idea, other than just being pretentious and having their noses so far up in the air that this slick New Yorker and these dumb Midwesterners can't possibly pull one over on us. And guess what? Looks like they did.
Well,
and they went and grabbed a brand that you'd grabbed from them. So take backs, buddy. And you know what? I'm not anti-pack. I'm not rooting against them, but the arrogance, man, like if there's one thing that I do not like in this world is arrogance, no matter where it comes from. I just don't like it. I'm put off by it. And there was a lot of arrogance, not necessarily directly from the commissioner, but just in general. Pack fans, no problem with you, no issue with you, but there wasn't arrogance. And so to hear him talk, or to hear that, he was possibly caught off guard, or that anybody was possibly caught off guard, it's just ridiculous. I mean, and it's the opposite of what you would be told to believe as far as their mental capacity and their how smart and well read and educated everybody is. You idiots in the Big 12, and it's like, who's the idiot now, man? Because you had your warnings and you thought, I guess, it was all BS.
Okay, Jason